Well, hello everyone. We haven't done one of these in a while. This is our roundtable review of Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Woo! Which promises to be the most dividing Star Wars.
Yes, there has certainly not been any divisive or extensive or unnecessarily vitriolic reviews of this movie at all. No. Right, Jared?
Not at all.
And just to let you know, this channel is not made for kids. Kappa, hashtag, retweet.
We're gonna get demonetized.
Jeez.
Are you
Like-
demonetized?
Like this channel's monetized anyway.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I mean,
I haven't paid any money to it or received any payment for doing any of this stuff.
Oh, were we supposed to be getting payments?
Were we supposed to be getting payments?
From all
I let you-
all your millions of views?
I let you come into my house.
Oh, okay.
Play my video games.
Okay.
And take up my food. Now you want money?
Partake of your food. What's this?
It's like
We were getting food right after this.
Yeah, but we're all paying for it.
It's like printing his own money. I'm here to mediate and tell you the facts how they are. There's been way too many videos on YouTube with the red circles and why The Last Jedi is a cinematic failure and this and that and the other. We're here to set the record straight on why or why not this movie is good and why this movie is also bad. Because that's what we've been doing to all the Star Wars movies, and we're going to continue to do it. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I think before we go on, we'll go ahead and establish our positions on the movie, I guess you could say. You know, Justin just said he's the mediator.
As mediator, I deem a 2-minute maximum on your opinion of this movie. I know you have all the evidence, Jared.
This is gonna be the shortest video we've done.
This debate team or something?
Yes. And
Where's my buzzer? I need my buzzer.
No, you don't have to do 2 minutes, but I guess I'll start because I'm on kind of not the fence, but I can see both sides and I kind of am in the middle about this movie. There are parts of this movie that I really like, and one of them, I have to say, that I really like the movie, and the soundtrack that was given out of this movie I thought was really good. I thought the effects and the some of the cinematography, but I thought that the effects and some of the cinematography that's shown in this movie is also pretty cool. Like the whole Millennium Falcon part where they're flying through the cave, that part is awesome. And every time I watch this movie, I'm like, okay, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. The part when they're fighting in Snoke's throne room is really cool. And as much as people have been debating about it, I think that the part where she hyperdrives through Snoke's ship, while it breaks a lot of the movies, the effect in the movie theater when I first saw it has stuck with me the entire time that I've watched it. Because the sound and stuff in that part is really cool. Now, do I agree with Admiral Holdo's decisions through the entire movie? That's a big no. There's a big part of this movie that could have been avoided. My least favorite part of this movie could have been avoided if Holdo had just been like, hey, this is our plan, this is what we're gonna do. Okay. Then we wouldn't have Canto Bight or Poe trying to freaking Poe taking over the ship. It's just... Anyway, that whole part, my biggest problem with this movie is the Canto Bight thing. I really just don't, every time I watch it, I don't really like it. And I can see where people are like, oh, but it needed to be for Finn and Rose's arc, and we needed to talk about why Finn needs to be focused on the rebellion, blah, blah, blah. It's fine. It's great. But I don't like it.
I think that's like a good thing to mention, is because like there are so many people who argue their points for this movie, which of course we are going to do. We've already been doing that for all these movies. But I think in the end, one thing that I think people forget about film criticism, especially when talking about this movie, is that you can lay out an argument for a certain thing, but you can still either like disagree or agree with something just based on your personal enjoyment of something.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That's correct.
I completely understand a lot of people's issues with this movie, and I completely recognize a lot of the illogical consistencies or maybe some of the things that just don't work. But for some reason, I don't know, like, I've seen this movie 7 times now, all the way through. And every single time, I recognize those things that other people have like pointed out as legitimate issues with the movie, but I don't know why they don't bother me. Like maybe I'm just 100% in sync with Rian Johnson's vision, or maybe I just appreciate filmmaking that is more unique and interesting for this franchise. Or I don't know. I still haven't quite put my finger on it, just what it is that makes this whole thing click for me despite the issues. But that's another thing where it's like Canto Bight, you know, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at its position in the story, it's this side quest. It's more or less a side quest.
It's a side quest.
Which on its own might be an okay, like, Clone Wars episode. But
the Clone Wars are better than no. Don't sully the name of Clone Wars with
I
that.
know, but you get my
Clone
point.
Wars had some bad episodes.
This is
too.
true, but
Yeah.
that's true.
But you get my
continue.
point,
Sorry,
right?
yeah, I
Like,
get it.
It's more or less like the total runtime in Canto Bight is a little bit less than an episode. And so the amount of time it takes in the movie and how it kind of is sidetracking from the main plot of the Resistance trying to flee from the First Order or Rey going to Luke, it does stand out.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, it's another one of those things where I don't mind it while it's happening.
I have a thought about that. So remember how Empire Strikes Back? We all like agreed that Empire Strikes Back, independent of what our own lists were, we all thought Empire Strikes Back was really, really, really good.
Yes.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so the whole thing of Empire Strikes Back is Luke going to find Yoda, and Han and Leia escaping from the First Order, from the Empire. And we talked about in the Attack of the Clones review that Attack of the Clones was trying to replicate that kind of with Obi-Wan going to find the cloners and Anakin and Padme going to Naboo but actually going to Tatooine, and then in a roundabout way they all get together at the end, right?
Yeah.
I think that they were trying to do the same thing with Last Jedi.
Oh, absolutely.
But they fell into the same trap of Attack of the Clones, where they made one part of it, like, I found myself when I was watching it, I was like, okay, go back to Rey and Luke. I don't care about them trying to find a code breaker. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to see what Rey was doing, what Luke was doing. I wanted to see more training, because that was the interesting part. Half of my excitement about this movie was like, okay, we're finally going to see what Luke has been doing this whole time and why he vanished and blah, 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 all that stuff. And every time we cut to Finn and Rose and Poe and all this stuff, it's like, okay, but I don't really like, I don't know, go back to the Jedi stuff. That's the part that's the name of the movie and it's awesome, and even, anyway.
I've always been under the impression that, and this is something that took me a while to understand as well, that there's something different between objective fact and subjective enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you enjoy something, you can enjoy it as much as you want. And no one can ever take that away from you. And I'm glad that there are people that enjoy this movie. I'm glad that there are people that enjoy The Room. I'm glad that there are people that enjoy, I'm glad there are people who enjoy Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Which has for the longest time been the worst movie for me of all the Star Wars films, because the Attack of the Clones is really bad.
So bad.
Yes, it is
It
bad.
really is. And so I'm glad that there are people that enjoy these things. But when you enjoy something, like, there still needs to be that acknowledgement that there are objective flaws with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If you love Attack of the Clones, you still got to understand that the lines in it are horrible and there's no chemistry and there's problem after problem after problem. So I feel like that's part of the issue for Last Jedi. That for the people that hate it, they don't want to see that there are any positive things. And that the people that love it, they don't want to even comprehend that there are negative things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been told time and time again that I only dislike Last Jedi because my theories were wrong. Or that I only dislike Last Jedi because I'm racist, or sexist, or a Russian troll, which is one of my favorites personally.
Russian troll.
Clearly, yeah.
What?
That was one of Rian Johnson's personal statements too.
What?
And so, being told these things,
Funny.
like, I disagree with that, because I don't dislike The Last Jedi because it has women in it or it has people of color in it. I dislike it because there are flaws in the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I'm glad people enjoy it, because movies are meant to be enjoyed.
Yes.
And so I love that people can take something that I really dislike and still find joy in it. But I still recognize that there are flaws in it. And those flaws get more pronounced for me every time that I watch the movie. I've seen it 4 times. I haven't seen it 7 like you, Zach.
Lucky 7.
But the first time that I watched it, I actually really enjoyed The Last Jedi.
Okay.
When I saw it midnight showing in theaters. The second time that I watched it, I was like, I don't know. Some of these things are kind of iffy, like Candlelight and Holdo and Luke, his personality change. And then the third time that I watched, I was like, oh man, that's really bad. Oh man, that's really bad. And so my enjoyment has gone down time and time again. And part of that's because of these conversations that the internet's been having. Because no one wants to agree that there are other sides to the story.
That is true.
And so
I'm firmly in the belief that there are parts of this I like. Like, I like the fact that Luke, I thought the Force apparition thing, I thought that was so cool in theaters. I really thought it was cool, and I'm really sad because I feel like I pay attention enough in movies that I could have picked that up. Because when you watch it, he moves his foot and nothing moves under it. And I never saw it until I watched it a second time. I was like, how did I not see this before? But I thought that part was so cool, and I thought that him talking smack to Kylo Ren is really, really funny. Like, when when Kylo Ren sticks the lightsaber in him, and Luke just looks at him like, and he's like, see you around, kid. And Kylo Ren like realizes that Luke's been just playing with him the whole time, and he's like, no!
See, I loved that part originally because I was like, finally we're getting Luke back. This is the Luke Skywalker we've been waiting for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then when I found out that they killed him, not that it wasn't originally planned to kill him, but that they did that in a post-editing scene, that they decided to actually kill him off, I was really bummed out about that because like, well, but I wanted Luke. Like, I wanted to see Luke Skywalker, the character that he's...
And I also feel like there's parts of this movie that will be... I have this hope. The embers of hope shine on, yes. But I have this hope that Rise of Skywalker is going to rectify some of the things like that. And I know that they probably won't, but it still is like, man, I really hope that they rectify that, and this is all just like a big dream that's Luke's having, and he wakes up on the island.
I've heard this before.
No, I joke. No, but I hope that with Rise of Skywalker, I hope that some of this stuff, the problems that we find in this video and that we talk about, is rectified after 9. Now, I don't know if that'll actually happen, but I have this hope that Last Jedi will make sense within the continuity of 7, 8, 9, because we don't know the last movie. I think it'll be a little bit different once we see Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be different, but it's kind of interesting the way that you brought up Luke Skywalker, because you mentioned that like in the moment, like it's a cool scene and like it's really effective for that moment. Excuse me, between Luke and Kylo Ren. But it's so fascinating, again, to go back to the point about how Last Jedi, people miss the fact that a lot of people's reaction to it can just be purely subjective. Mm-hmm. You know, like, people were annoyed at The Force Awakens that Luke only showed up literally in the last,
30 seconds.
In Last Jedi, you know, it's been over 30 years since we've seen Mark Hamill in front of a camera in canon as Luke Skywalker, and then he becomes one with the Force at the end. Yeah. But I don't know. I think for me, that's one of the key things that I really love about The Last Jedi, is like, even though Luke's arc in the movie is so incredibly divisive among our fandom, I appreciate just the way that it was able to take elements that were in the original trilogy about Luke and carry that through. And the way I defend it is, you know, a person can change a lot in a 30-year time span, the likes of which we don't see in the sequel trilogy, which can be considered a flaw. But, you know, with Luke, you don't know how much that Kylo Ren's betrayal or the whole entire wiping out of his school, and then, of course, the Starkiller base taking out, you know, the New Republic and everything like that, all of that was inadvertently because of Luke's mistake. And because he, in a similar moment to when he almost struck down his own father in Return of the Jedi, I don't know, kind of looking at that and seeing how even 30 years after that, he made that mistake and kind of saw his own flaws, I can see why he would be in a position where all this guilt was being weighed on him like an anvil being pressed onto somebody.
Yeah, I massively disagree with like all of that.
See, that's fine.
And I feel like Luke Skywalker's character is complete 180 from what we saw in the original trilogy. Because what I see from Luke Skywalker is the man who decided that Darth Vader has hope. And you mentioned the scene where he actually fights against Vader and goes full out against him. But even in that moment, it was to defend his family. It was only after Darth Vader brought up Leia that Luke Skywalker went ham on him. And even then, Luke Skywalker held back. He still said, oh shoot, no, this is not what I want. This is in a split second. He went from fighting to completely throwing away his lightsaber and staring down the Emperor to protect his family again, to protect Darth Vader because he was his father.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not the Luke Skywalker that would make one mistake after holding his lightsaber up against his nephew, which I could never see Luke doing that, and then completely abandoning his family after that. Completely abandoning his friends, abandoning his duty. Like, even if that mistake where we're actually now finding in the canon that Kylo did not burn down the Jedi Temple and that was someone else entirely, but we don't want to talk about the comics and stuff because
they're stupid.
Focusing on the movie itself,
Yes.
all we see is Luke Skywalker getting up, and instead of saying, oh shoot, I made a mistake, let's fix it, he says, I'm going to go die now. He doesn't go and help Leia. He doesn't go and help Han. He doesn't go and help his nephew that is 25 years old at this point. So he's known Luke for 25 years.
He's as old as us.
He's as old as us. So
yeah.
he knew Leia for like 3 years, and he was willing to fight his father over that. He knew Kylo Ren for 25 years, and he almost attempts to murder him. And as soon as he makes a single mistake, because Kylo was not in the dark side yet, as soon as he makes a single mistake, he says, I'm going to go die now. And he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And he just completely forgets his family, forgets everything, doesn't try to rectify his mistake, and just leaves. And I can't see Luke Skywalker changing as a character within the 30 years, or I should say within 5 years, because 25 years of happiness had happened. So I can't see him changing within 5 years to become the character that we had in Last Jedi, personally.
Mm-hmm. No, and like I said, that's okay. That's another one of those points where I can completely see the other side of it. But for me, I think I don't know. There is so much that we don't know about Luke that, for me, in thinking about his character arc, and even though it is a very bold choice to have Luke do that, I was personally okay with it, just thinking about how, in the moment, we learned that, Luke had that same instinct, wanting to protect his family, and wanting to protect everything else that he had built up too. He helped build the Jedi Order back up. We don't know what he did in helping the New Republic get back to what it was. And yes, the choice to almost kill his nephew, that is a bad choice.
It's like walking into your nephew's room with a loaded pistol, and while he's sleeping, and just standing over him with the loaded pistol.
Yeah.
Can you see Luke Skywalker from Episode 6 doing that?
Well, no, but that's the point for me, though, because Luke himself, after he turns that on, realizes he can't do that either.
After 30 seconds of standing there.
Well, no, it's immediate. He turns it on, but then immediately that thought comes to him. He was filled with shame, and realizing that now that he's done this, there's no going back. That was not it was. For me, in that moment, I could see that it was just an immediate.
I'm just talking about the movie. In the movie, we see him, he holds up the lightsaber, and for some time, he's standing there, ready to strike down Ben. And then he talks about how it was a moment of shame. Now, whether that moment was half a minute long or 5 microseconds, I don't know. That's pointless to debate. But
yeah.
But even that moment was too long for me.
And that's fair.
I know what you're saying. As the mediator, I can see both your points. I personally thought that, I feel like one of the major themes of this movie is that, at least what I've gotten out of this movie, is that when Yoda comes, which by the way, kudos to whoever thought that it was a good idea. I think it was Rian Johnson, but kudos to whoever thought that it would be a good idea to actually do Puppet Yoda. You deserve a raise, because the fact that they made a Puppet Yoda and got the original like mannequin out and built one that was as close to Empire Strikes Back Yoda as we could get, I thought that was a stroke of genius. One of the themes of this movie is that, yeah, even the biggest people fail, but you still have to, even the most like high on a pedestal people fail, and it's a major flaw in humanity, and you still need to be able to face your mistakes and move on from them, if you know what I mean. And I feel like that's illustrated in this movie with Luke. Now, I think that I wish that they'd have made him less grumpy old Luke and more like, I don't know, Jedi Mastery Luke, where we could have seen awesome power and, oh, I'm a Jedi Master, I'm gonna go face down the First Order with a laser sword thing. By the way, why did he say laser sword? It was a lightsaber. Why?
Gotta throw in that little callback to the old days.
Another thing that bugs me too, I'm gonna admit.
I would have liked to have had more Luke, Jedi Master Luke, where he's like leading with Rey into the fray, and they're gonna fight down the First Order. That would have been cool to me, I think. But I can also see why, because of that theme, I can see why they wanted to illustrate Luke that way. Now, yeah, so I wish that some creative choices with the material had been done differently so that we could see, maybe to a lesser extent, failure Luke and more Jedi Master Luke. Because I think that would have helped the story and would have united both sides to, okay, he was a failure, but also he was a really cool Jedi and didn't make his, you know what I mean?
Yeah. See, I've heard the use of themes as a defense of Last Jedi many times. That there's a theme here and a theme there and a theme here. And failure is one of the biggest themes that I see it spoken of. But I feel like it's such it's not a real concept. Because they talk about it like it's a theme, but they don't show it at all. Like, for one of the examples, failure is Poe Dameron failing to bring back the fleet and when he was attacking the Dreadnought. Except he was doing the right choice by destroying the Dreadnought. Because if the Dreadnought had lived, it would have blown them all out of space 10 minutes later when they hyperspace tracked them.
Alright, that's fair.
And so, like, things like that, if failure is the theme of the movie, or if there's another theme of the movie, they're not showing it. And so it just becomes a defense of the movie without actually becoming something with tangible evidence.
That's fair.
Like Mark Hamill said himself that Luke is not the type of character to take a failure and then just die about it. He would get back up on his feet after a couple of days, a couple of weeks. Maybe if it was something really traumatic, he would take a couple months. But he would eventually come back. That's what Mark Hamill said. And I agree with that Luke is not the type of character that will take a failure, which that was a failure, absolutely, that he failed Kylo Ren in that single moment. But then everything after that, take the next 5 years and go to an unfindable place in the most unfindable place in all the galaxy. And despite giving a map to Lord Santeca.
Yes, we know.
And then die.
Well, Rian Johnson throwing out that plot point is like Luke throwing out his lightsaber. He's like, that's just dumb.
I will say this, I really didn't like that. This watch through, I was like,
I was fine with it.
As you are.
Hey, I'm gonna toe the line between both of them. I don't know.
Like every single thing that has been talked about already tonight, I feel like I personally have something to say that this is why I don't like it. And so that's what kills me about this kind of discussion, because I do see where you're coming from. I see why people would think that failure is a theme, or think that a certain scene is awesome. But I'm like, well, here's a reason why I don't think it's awesome. And it kills me, because I want to like The Last Jedi. But,
So, as the mediator, we've talked about a lot of stuff.
Wait.
We've talked about a lot of stuff to the point that the phone couldn't handle all of the everything that we had to talk about.
Yeah.
But we're going to kind of finish here with what we think of the movie. It's like our scores, and like we normally do it in any of the reviews that we've done. We'll give it a score depending on out of 10 or the letter grade or whatever.
Last Jedi is divisive. It is controversial. I do not enjoy it. I find a lot of the writing problematic, and I find plot holes every single time, every single scene, and it's perfectly fine to me if someone else enjoys it, but I personally do not. And so it kind of bums me out that this is where Star Wars is at now.
Mm-hmm.
That this is the fandom that we were left, and now we have to just, instead of being ridiculously excited for the next Star Wars movie, we're kind of hoping and praying that it's decent. And that doesn't feel good to me anymore.
The hype for this movie has definitely been more akin to kind of just like cautiously
just end it already. Just let the pain stop.
Versus Endgame, where it's like everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Every trailer, let's watch it and analyze it.
So here's the thing I think about Last Jedi. The effects of Last Jedi's decisions have affected Star Wars probably for the remainder of the time that Disney's going to own Star Wars, which is probably forever.
They're never going to sell it.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, the fact that this movie was so divisive and like controversial, Solo suffered from it, which we all thought Solo was a good movie. I mean, it had its flaws, yes, but it was a good movie overall.
Enjoyable enough.
Rebels probably suffered from this show too. I don't know when Rebels ended, that's my fault, but everything about Star Wars has received kind of a limp from this movie, if that makes sense. To the point where the fact that Mandalorian is so good, it brings me hope that they're going to that this movie was such a gut check, and like we'll be able to enjoy better Star Wars content from here on out. Because if Disney is smart, as I hope they're smart, they're going to realize that Dave Filoni is a Star Wars treasure, and he needs to just be involved in everything that's Star Wars related now. Because he just makes good Star Wars content.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my hope for Disney from now on. Mm-hmm. I view this movie as I've enjoyed watching it, and I think there are parts of it that are good, but there are also parts that I really detest about it, and it's just, I hope from here on out we're going to move on to smoother and better Star Wars movies.
As I've said before in this review, this is one of those cases where I completely get all of the criticisms people have, and I completely understand both of your points, but it's just another situation where I could be a Rian Johnson shill, or I just...
Fanboy.
I very well could be. I don't know. I mean, Knives Out's one of my favorite movies of this year, but I don't know. Like, just the thoughts that I've had on it, despite the fact that there are writing issues for sure, and there are technical glitches in some cases, it just works for me as a Star Wars story, and I think it was a good, innovative push in the right direction. But I do recognize that, you know, perhaps if this trilogy was planned out more, and if The Last Jedi was still took in the direction that it was with some more refinement, maybe we could have had a more consistent trilogy.
I think if they'd have better refinement, then we'd have a better movie.
Hey, it subverted my expectations, and that's all you need for a good movie.
Hey!
Good times had by all. I mean, okay time. Oh, maybe not even okay.
Divisive times had by all.
Divisive times had by all.
It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
I ate, I drank, I laughed, I cried.
I watched Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Oh boy. Thank you for watching our discussion of The Last Jedi. I'm sorry that you won't get to hear some of the other things we talked about because my phone was being dumb and didn't record everything.
It's okay.
But before we close out, I wanted to propose an idea. You know, The Last Jedi, if we stuck with the schedule that we already had, this video would have come out last month. But we nonetheless put it out on this opening weekend of Rise of Skywalker. But kind of what you alluded to with your experience with The Last Jedi was, you saw it the first time, you really enjoyed it. Second time, you're like, eh. And the more times you saw it, the less you liked it. I'm almost wondering if maybe we should put off our discussion of The Rise of Skywalker at least a couple of weeks for us to see it at least twice, so that we're not just having like knee-jerk reactions to things that we saw.
I mean, it depends on the quality. Like, if I really enjoy it, then sure, I'll go and see it again.
Oh,
But
man.
I don't go and see movies twice very often, personally. Like, I could probably afford it, but I don't know if I
Well,
would.
you get free
This may
movies
shock
from
you.
both of us.
This may shock you, but I hardly ever see things twice too.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
Yeah.
So, like, if it's really good, then yeah, I'd be all up for that. But if, like, it's not so good, then maybe one time would be enough for me.
I'm gonna end up having to see it twice because I'm gonna have to take my wife to see it. So
I don't know. I just want to make sure that like the opinions we're gonna share in our video will be actual opinions and not just having like, you know, Star Wars fan reactions. I mean, the things that we're gonna say in that video aren't gonna be the definitive opinions we're gonna have on Rise of Skywalker, because this video here is us talking about The Last Jedi after 2 years of discourse and listening to other people and us thinking about our own opinions. And Rise of Skywalker, it's still going to be thinking fresh off the film's premiere. So I don't know.
Right.
That's kind of just where my headspace was at.
I guess
I
we'll
don't
cross
think
that
you're in
bridge
the
when we
wrong.
come to it.
I don't think you're in the wrong spot, but we should probably all watch it first. 'Cause-
Oh,
no. But listen. The reason I say that is because remember how me and you walked out of Endgame, and remember how we were like, "It's the best Marvel movie ever," and then we watched it again, and we were like, okay. At least in my thought process, I was like, okay, all right. I could have done without 2 hours of time travel and just been okay with the last part where all my action figures hopped out of the toy bin to fight Thanos and his
Yeah.
action figures. So anyway, I Endgame got less for me as I watched it. I still think it's a good movie, and I really like where that movie was. But I think that, like you said, I think Rise of Skywalker will be awesome the first time I see it. Unless it's amazing, then every time I watch it, it'll be awesome. But I'm cautiously hopeful now. Like, I don't know.
I personally feel like if we see it and then a week later, after we've had time to actually simmer and let the thoughts just like think about it for a bit, I think that'll be a little bit more pure of a reaction than just because like any movie you walk out of and it is at least half decent, you'll walk out being like, yeah, it was the best.
Oh,
Right.
Ad Astra.
not Ad Astra, because halfway through that movie I was bemoaning my time spent. But like
We
you
all-
said,
we
like,
all would.
I would like a more pure reaction than just what I get walking out of the theater
Yes.
after I've had time to think about it.
Yes.
Not necessarily see it twice, but have time to think about it. So.
It was my experience with Baby Driver when I saw that for the first time. Thought it was the best movie that came out in 2017. And then I saw it again, and I still really liked it, but I was like, I shouldn't have been as crazy with my praise as I should have been. So maybe we can hold off till at least, after the new year, maybe?
Yeah, sounds good
Yeah.
to me.
Sounds about right.
Cool. So after listening to us discuss that for a little bit, thank you for your patience, and thanks again for watching.
Have a good one.
Bye.